So if war has been a principal engine for the growth of presidential power, has anything else been an engine for the growth of presidential power?
Other factors have as well. So for example, various crises have. The Depression era represented a period in which we saw tremendous growth of presidential power, although most of that was a function of the fact that Congress delegated broader and broader authority to the president, who happened to be Franklin Roosevelt at that point. And another factor that has helped to grow presidential power, or I would say to enable presidents to more easily aggrandize power, has been the expectation of the American people that the president should be responsible for addressing and solving the problems that we face. We live in a very president-centric period in which the American people look not to Congress, but to the president as a solution to our problems. And frankly, as a third out of many other factors, we could say that no person on the campaign trail seeking the presidency is going to disavow the broad powers that have been aggrandized by the office for fear of looking weak and inept.
We talked about executive orders not too long ago. In the context of presidential power, can you discuss the benefits and costs of executive orders?
On the positive side, as a benefit, it allows the president to act in a streamlined, efficient way to run the executive branch. As the chief administrator of the executive branch, the president needs to have the tools and the powers to try to promote the policies and programs within the executive branch, and so executive orders is the principal way of doing that. But the downside has been that presidents have often expanded the concept of executive orders to a very broad power now to substitute for laws and policies that would otherwise be promoted or enacted by Congress. And so there's no misunderstanding among the American people about the fact that executive orders have become such a vital tool in the growth of presidential power.
Well, let's talk about some limitations on presidential power, because there must be some. What constitutional limitations are placed upon the power of the presidency?
Because the presidency is the recipient of powers in Article 2 that are granted in affirmative terms, it's to be understood that the only powers vested in the president are those that are spelled out or fairly implied in Article 2. The other checks and balances, limitations, have to be carried out by Congress and, of course, by the federal judiciary. When we talk about the judiciary, unfortunately, the courts have a checkered record in checking the president. Going all the way back to 1936, the Supreme Court has rendered a string of decisions that have helped to expand presidential power without a basis in the text of the Constitution or in the legislative history of the convention. Students will become familiar with United States versus Curtis Wright in 1936 as a case where the Supreme Court in dictum labeled the president as, quote, the sole organ of American foreign policy. But that was a gross exaggeration. But once it was out there, so to speak, presidents have been quick to embrace it, to cite the Supreme Court as the source of very broad authority for the president in foreign affairs. Interestingly, in this last term in Zivotofsky versus Kerry, the Supreme Court appeared to trim back on the Curtis Wright citation, saying it did not necessarily embrace the concept that the president had those broad authorities. So we might see a trend toward the other direction.
If the Supreme Court can declare a presidential action unconstitutional, what can Congress do to check the power of the presidency?
Congress has many tools in addition to asserting its own authority. One would be the power of the purse, the ultimate way to deny the president the funds necessary to carry out various foreign policy or national security objectives. And a second tool would be the great weapon of impeachment. The threat to unsheath the power of impeachment would probably give real pause to a president interested in usurping further authority.